Good afternoon and welcome to Ask the Doc. This is the monthly program where we give our audience the opportunity to ask our experts in the fields of dementia and Alzheimer's disease their burning questions. My name is Dr. Megan Whitbrocht. I'm the Associate Director of Education here at UCI Mind and the co-host for this program. UCI Mind is one of several Alzheimer's disease research centers that are federally designated by the National Institute of Aging, which is part of the National Institutes of Health. So today I have a absolutely fantastic guest on who's getting a ton of coverage for his most recent paper. Dr. Michael Leon is a professor emeritus here at UCI, and much of his work is focused on the biology of scent and smell. So in July, he published a paper in Frontiers in Neuroscience on using scent to improve memory in older adults. Since he's published this paper, he's received about 250,000 views, and he's been featured in about 200 news articles. So we are so excited to have Dr. Leon here on the program. Before I bring him on, though, I just want to remind our audience, if you have questions, you can enter them into the chat in either Facebook or in YouTube. I can see we already have a ton of questions, and I can't wait to address them. And just remember that whatever you say or whatever you put in the chat online stays there forever. So be kind, be courteous. And with that, let's get started. Welcome, Dr. Leon.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, okay, great. So let's start kind of at the beginning, at the basics. I like to start at the basics because I want to build my knowledge as well. Why is the sense of smell important for mammals?
So the sense of smell is the oldest sense that we have, and consequently, it has different connections in the brain than the other senses. The olfactory system has the only direct, we call it a superhighway, that goes right into the memory centers of the brain. It also goes into the emotional center of the brain. All of the other senses get to those memory centers and emotional centers, but they have to take the brain side streets. They have to go through what's called the thalamus in order to get there. And so consequently, they have much less impact on keeping the memory centers of your brain healthy than olfaction. If you don't have olfactory stimulation, odor stimulation, the memory centers of your brain start to deteriorate. And people can have too little olfactory stimulation, both because they get older and their system starts to deteriorate, but they can have it at any age. Anything that interrupts the olfactory information from getting to the brain actually causes the memory centers of the brain to start to deteriorate. And anything that can do that would be toxins, air pollution, menopause, continual stress, head damage, head injuries, and COVID. Many people have experienced that over the last few years. And so all of those things cause the memory centers of your brain to deteriorate, and that makes you vulnerable to serious memory loss.
Got it. So then is it the input that's being deteriorated or how it's being processed? I'm sure I'm not saying this right, but where in the process of smell are things changing with age or exposure?
So the olfactory neurons, the neurons that sit in your nose and bind to volatile chemicals, that is odors, those things die over the course of time. They're the only neurons in the entire body that are exposed directly to the real world. And so all sorts of real world things get in there, like toxins, like air pollution, and those cause those neurons to die over time. And that's part of the reason why, as you get older, your sense of smell starts to deteriorate. And interestingly, it deteriorates at the same time and to the same extent as your memory starts to deteriorate after the age of 60.
Great. So can you tell us a little bit about the connection between sense of smell and Alzheimer's disease?
There's actually a very close connection between olfaction and Alzheimer's disease. The loss of olfactory ability is the first symptom of Alzheimer's disease. It occurs before any of the other symptoms, including memory loss. And the first part of the brain to go south before you get memory loss is the olfactory superhighway. And you can predict which older adults are most likely to get Alzheimer's disease based on their ability to smell things. You can also predict which individuals will develop mild cognitive impairment based on their ability to smell things. And among those individuals, you can predict which ones will actually develop Alzheimer's disease based on their ability to smell things. And among those individuals, you can determine which ones are most likely to have a rapid descent into dementia once they develop Alzheimer's disease. And it's not just Alzheimer's disease. All serious memory loss is accompanied by olfactory loss. All of the dementias, semantic dementia, Creutzfeldt-Jakob dementia, all of them are accompanied by olfactory loss. And it's not just dementia. Pretty much every neurological disorder that people can get is also accompanied by olfactory loss. Depression, epilepsy, stroke, autism, anorexia, all of these are accompanied by olfactory loss. And it's not just neurological problems. Many of your somatic problems, the things that are most likely to kill you, heart disease, cancer, liver disease, lung disease, kidney disease, all of those are associated with olfactory loss. And so it should be no surprise that there are now 7 major studies, epidemiological studies, showing that by mid-age, you can predict your all-cause mortality. That is, whether you live or whether you die for any reason based on your ability to smell things. So the olfactory system really is a signaling system for you to tell you how both your brain and your body are doing. And it may be coincidental that olfactory loss accompanies all these things, but my guess is that it actually makes you vulnerable to these neurological disorders.
So from what I'm hearing from you, that it may be unique pathways that are driving these connections, but it may also be sort of a similar pathway, or?
So the olfactory system goes to many parts of the brain, and many parts of the brain are associated with the immune response, the response to inflammation, and it just may allow the brain to express the symptoms of these disorders when it doesn't have sufficient olfactory stimulation.
So what can you tell us about the reasons why? I know sort of you mentioned it a bit, but the reasons why olfactory loss or sense of smell is lost before Alzheimer's disease, like an early predictor or an early biomarker of Alzheimer's disease. Why does that relationship exist?
So we don't know why it exists. It does exist. But you see this in many neurological disorders. For example, Parkinson's disease, the loss of olfaction occurs years before the loss of motor ability. Depression is also preceded by the loss of olfaction. And giving additional stimulation, that is, giving the stimulation that you're not getting typically, improves both your ability to smell things and your brain's ability to deal with these disorders.
Great. Okay, I want to get into your study because we're getting a ton of questions in the comments and I want to be able to get to all of them. So tell us about your study, sort of what your research question was, your hypotheses, how you conducted your study, and what your results were.
So we need to back up to understand why we did this study. And the reason is that there are many hundreds of basic laboratory studies done with rats and mice showing that when you put a rat or mouse in a typical standard box cage, they're isolated, they don't have much to do, but their brain seems fine. They learn fine, they remember fine, they have social interactions that are fine, their motor abilities are fine. But it turns out that if you give them a little bit more stimulation, that is, you take them from the standard cage and you move them into what's called an enriched environment. Enriched environment is just a much bigger cage with some rat or mouse friends and many more things to do. They are constantly changing the things that are in these large cages. And it turns out that when you put the rats or mice into an enriched environment, you get a brain that is much more sophisticated, it has many more connections, it has much more abilities. And so their motor behavior improves, their learning improves, their memory improves, social interaction improves. And these effects are quite dramatic. There are literally, as I pointed out, hundreds of them. Every week there are more of these publications. Even more interesting is that scientists can give rats and mice human neurological conditions. So they have 9 different models of Alzheimer's disease. They have 7 different models of autism. And all of these things are good models because they mimic the human conditions very well. That is, the symptoms that humans have are replicated in the rats and mice. But the interesting thing is that you see these symptoms only expressed to the full extent when they're in the standard box cage, isolated, very little stimulation. When you put them into an enriched environment, they lose many or all of their symptoms. In fact, a rat that's been poisoned with lead, a known neurotoxin, but is in the enriched environment, actually has better ability to learn and remember things than a rat who hasn't been poisoned with lead, but is in the standard cage. That's how powerful it is. All right. Interestingly, although there are 24 human neurological conditions that improve when you give them enriched environments, nobody had thought to use that in humans. And we were the first to do that. We thought that giving children who have autism an enriched environment at home would improve their symptoms. And in fact, it did that in a dramatic fashion. We gave parents a kit to take home, and every morning and evening for 15 minutes, they gave their child some of these novel exercises to do to stimulate all of their senses, to give them an enriched environment. And when we did that, we found really large improvements in these children. After 6 months, they had the ones who were given the enriched environment, had 42% of them had a major improvement in their symptoms, and that's compared to 7% of children with autism who were given standard care over that 6 months period. They also had improvements in their IQ, in their communication skills, in their social interactions, in their ability to focus on things and not focus on things. They have a dramatic improvement in their behavior, and all the ancillary problems that these kids have, sleeping problems, eating problems, mood problems, all of those improved as well. So we knew that giving the children an enriched environment would have a major impact on their brains and behavior. We then knew of a study in mice where they gave older mice an enriched environment, and they found that all they needed to do to mimic the entire enriched environment was to give them olfactory enrichment. What's that? Olfactory enrichment is when you give multiple odors to these individuals on a regular basis. And when they gave them olfactory enrichment, what happened is that there were many new neurons that were born and went into the brain circuits. Their memories got better, and they were able to show that just olfactory stimulation alone, olfactory enrichment, was enough to mimic the entire enriched environment phenomenon. And so we thought, well, if you can do this with mice, maybe you can do this with humans as well. And so we took a group of older adults, 60 to 85, and we gave them olfactory enrichment at home. And we did it while they slept, because we know that people are going to be in the same place every night when they sleep. And this allows them to get the olfactory stimulation with minimal activity. That is, we wanted to avoid having people having to do anything like exercise or computer games, where people tend not to stick with it. So the people were fine. They stuck with it. They pressed the button. The odors went on for 2 hours after they went to sleep. And after 6 months, they had a dramatic improvement in their memory. On the memory test that we used, there was a 226% improvement in memory. And to our knowledge, that's the largest improvement in memory seen in older adults, in a healthy older adult population. So these are dramatic changes. Collaborating with Mike Yassa and his group, we also found that an important memory pathway in the brain improved to almost an identical ability in the brains of these individuals. And so both brain and behavior improved dramatically with just olfactory enrichment.
So you used imaging and cognitive tests pre and post exposure, and you saw this 226% increase in memory function. And what parts of the brain seem to be stimulated or seem to be improved by the olfactory stimulation?
The part of the brain is a pathway called the uncinate fasciculus, which I'm sure you all know about. And it's a pathway that links critical parts of the memory system in the brain.
Great. Okay, let's get to our questions. So one question that seems to be coming up is, does the scent matter? So are there some scents that seem to be more important than others? Why did you choose 7? Can you tell us a little bit more about those individual scents?
So that kind of question really comes because virtually everybody knows about aromatherapy. And in aromatherapy, there's this whole business about this specific odor has this specific impact on your health. And it's different from what we're doing. It's very different. What we're doing is olfactory enrichment, in which it's the multiplicity of odors that is critical, not the identity of any specific odor. And that allows you to use pretty much any odors that you want. The ones that we just picked because we liked them, and they weren't outrageously costly, and we were able to get them, and the people who used them also thought that they were quite pleasant, and they were happy to use them. 7, we just did it because we had these very primitive diffusers, and these diffusers were only capable of putting out 1 odor a night. And in order to make it easy, we had different bottles filled with different odors so that people can just click them into the device, the diffuser, every night. And so 7 seemed like a good idea because we could make it 1 every day of the week, and we labeled them with the day of the week. And that allowed us to make it easier for people to do it.
Right. So, and I think you said this, and I probably missed it. These were cognitively unimpaired older adults, correct?
Yes, they were just regular older adults, all of whom have memory problems. So we are quite aware that things can get a lot worse, and these were not severely impacted individuals. Nevertheless, they had significant memory loss.
Okay, so there's a great question about, do you think there's an interaction between the benefits of sleep and the benefits of this olfactory stimulation?
So it turns out that olfactory stimulation improves sleep. And it may be that part of the reason that their memory is better is that people are sleeping better. We don't know that that's the case, but that's one realistic possibility. More likely is that the olfactory stimulation is actually improving the memory centers of the brain directly, and we think that's the more likely possibility. But I don't think anybody's going to complain about getting a better night's sleep.
No. Did you measure sleep quality at all in your study?
Yeah, and so it looks like there's an improvement in sleep, and we've done a second study showing that it may also more specifically increase the amount of REM sleep, or the time when people are most likely to be dreaming.
Right. There's another great question about a threshold. So does missing aromatherapy for a few nights or even a couple weeks negate the effect or lessen the effect of the olfactory stimulation?
So the reason that we use 6 months is that we know that people are not going to be home every night. They're going to visit their grandchildren. They're going to go to Italy. They're going to, sleep on the couch. Whatever the reason, we knew that this was not going to happen every night. And we just record that. We know when people miss it. And it doesn't look like that's going to be a problem. The nice thing about it is it's not, take this for 10 days, and if you miss half of them, that's a problem. It's an ongoing phenomenon. And our feeling is that you probably are going to need this in the long term. The nice thing is that you can get it without much effort.
So what was the mean number of nights that your participants used the olfactory stimulation?
They used it virtually every night. There were individuals who went away for a couple of weeks. Some of them took their device with them, but it didn't really impact the outcome of the study.
So can you just tell us what sense you actually selected? I know it didn't necessarily matter, but just curiosity.
All right. It's rose, rosemary, lemon, orange, peppermint, eucalyptus, and lavender.
Nice. You should get Bath and Body Works to sponsor your next
The
study.
people who make the essential oils were very happy when we reported this.
Okay, and now someone has a question. I've had a problem for decades remembering names. Will doing the nighttime scent diffusion help improve this issue specifically?
We don't know whether the olfactory stimulation will improve name recollection. I have poor name recollection, and I've always had poor name recollection. And my wife tells me it's because I don't care. So that may be a better way of treating that.
Got it. Yeah, so for your test, were there certain components of memory that improved more than others? Did it just measure one type of memory? Can you tell us?
It was specific for this kind of memory that we tested. It's auditory learning. So if I read a list of words to you and I ask you to remember them, that's the kind of memory test it was. It's pretty similar to a lot of things that you'll experience over the course of the day.
Yeah, great. Okay, here's another great question. If a person's sense of smell is almost non-existent, will this stimulation possibly reignite a better sense of smell? In addition to that, what effects do you think that will have on memory in terms of if someone doesn't have much ability to smell, do you expect the same results?
Yes. So this process is called olfactory training. And what it does is if you give people odors on a regular basis, olfactory training, what that does is that it improves the ability of the brain to smell those odors. So even if you have a really bad sense of smell, this is a way to improve the sense of smell. And probably by doing that, you can improve your memory.
Okay, next question. Do people need to start these the stimulation while they're still awake, or does it all have to be done while someone's asleep?
So the system that we used for this study, people pushed a button and the odors went on as they were going to sleep. I should tell you about our more recent work in which we've developed a device that will give 40 odors a night twice while you're sleeping. It sits on the nightstand and blows odor toward you, and this allows you to get the odors that your brain needs over time, and it does it without any effort. In this case, you put in one cartridge once a month, you press a button just as you go to sleep, and then an hour later, it will come on every night for the next month. So there's no effort, and you get 40 odors twice a night. What's wonderful about 40 odors twice a night is that another study has shown that if you give people 40 odors twice a day, what happens is that you can even improve the memory of demented older adults, which no one's been able to do. At this point, olfactory enrichment is the best treatment for Alzheimer's disease. Right? On 5 standard memory tests, these individuals had highly significant improvements in their memory, something that nobody's ever shown with any kind of medication, any kind of drug that's even been approved by the FDA. This is much, much better. And so what our device does is it allows you to get this kind of stimulation without any effort, and so you can get universal compliance for it. The device is called Memory Air. If you're interested in being notified when it's coming on the market, probably in January, you can go to memoryair.com and sign up, and we'll notify you if you're interested in getting one of these.
So Dr. Leon, are you saying that the new study that you're doing now is looking at this olfactory stimulation in persons living with dementia?
That study's already been done, and it is published, and it's quite striking. Not only did they have dramatic improvements on 5 standard memory tests, but they also had a very big improvement in their depression symptoms, something that somebody else found in older adults who weren't demented. And so this is another issue that's important because, again, the olfactory system is the only system that goes directly to the memory centers and also to the emotional center of the brain. Again, when you have depression, you have olfactory loss. And what they're showing is that you can improve depression by giving olfactory enrichment.
Wow, that's great. Okay, let me make sure I got all of these questions. Will this Memory Air be pet safe? I know that some of what is the term? You mentioned it earlier. Some of these scents like tea tree oil might not be safe for pets. Is this device and the scents that it puts out safe for pets?
So I have a cat, and it's the cat's doing fine. Yeah, all of the odors that we used are natural. They're generally regarded as safe by the FDA, and we've used them, and others have used them with no adverse consequences, either for the people or their pets.
Great, and this brings up another question. You mentioned it seems to be safe. Any adverse events or any risk of any side effects from using these products?
We haven't seen any side effects.
Okay.
I mean, people do this for 1,000 years, and that's why they continue to use it, because people actually like the odors. They're very pleasant, and it makes people feel good to smell them. Interestingly, you can't actually smell while you're sleeping, and people have tried to develop an olfactory alarm clock. You say, why would you bother? Well, deaf people can't wake up with a sound alarm clock, obviously. And so people have tried using odors to wake them up, including the odor of frying bacon. None of it works. When you're asleep, you can't process the perception of odors. At the same time, the odors are getting in there and stimulating the memory and emotional centers of your brain.
Wow. That's so interesting. Okay, let me just, questions are coming in. I think that might be all of them, Dr. Leon. Are you currently doing studies now? Is there a place people can go to sign up for a current study that you're doing?
Yes, they can again go to memoryair.com and sign up and indicate or send us a message indicating that you're interested in being in the study. The study that we ran at UCI was entirely composed of people who are on the consent to contact list at UCI with iMind. And so it's been a very successful collaboration with this group.
Yes, we love the UCI consent to contact registry. We promote it all of the time.
Yeah.
It's a great group of people who are really research motivated, and I'm so glad that you were successful using it.
Yeah, and that's the most difficult thing of doing clinical trials is recruitment. And if you already have a pre-screened group of people who are interested, that just makes it much, much easier to do research.
I couldn't say it better myself. So thank you, Dr. Leon. It's been a pleasure having you on the program. I could tell by the questions that we got that people were really interested. But I think we'll have to say goodbye for today, and maybe we'll have you back on soon.
Happy to do that.
Great. Thank you. And thank you to our audience. Today was a really exciting program. If you're more interested in the work that we do, visit mind.uci.edu. If you're interested in seeing this program, we'll load it onto our Mindcast website, which is mind.uci.edu/Mindcast. And then if you're interested in participating in the consent to contact registry, the registry that Dr. Leon used to recruit his participants, go to c2c.uci.edu. And with that, we'll see you next month. Thank you for joining us, and take care. Bye-bye.